Good morning. In my Father's house are many mansions, Jesus tells us in John 14, verse 2. This morning we want to study that verse because it is so misunderstood in our day, where people imagine mansions as we have them on earth, where there is a lavish home surrounded by large open spaces. But this is totally opposite to what Jesus is trying to illustrate to us in the term mansions. Jesus is illustrating family on earth as the happy time, and pointing to also in heaven, surrounding the Father will be his children in a family of heaven. In this verse, Jesus is using architecture. And specifically, he is pointing to a typical Jewish home in his day, a small square structure that many people also use the roof because of the heat for a living space. But Jesus is using that to give an example of what he means about a mansion. Every Jew immediately understood this term, because if a father who lived in this house with his two sons, those sons grew up and married, they would bring home a bride, and the father would build an attachment onto the side of his house for his son and his bride and their future family. This is what Jesus meant when he said mansion. This is what the Jewish term of mansion means, an attachment on to the father's house. So if the second son married, then they would attach a second attachment to the father's house. The second son, his bride and his family, would live in that attachment. And in this concept of what Jesus is trying to illustrate on earth, of where the Father is surrounded by his family, so it will be in heaven in the family of God. Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions." In, not around, not scattered about, but in, attached to, with immediate access to the Father, were these mansions. And so he means when he says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare them for you. If it were not so, I would have told you." So Jesus is using then, to recap, this illustration to point about that importance of family life. To the Father on earth, so it is also to the family life in heaven with the Father in heaven.